You're welcome back. The African Development Bank Group's board of directors has approved $1.5 billion facility. And that's to help African countries avert a looming food crisis with the disruption of food supplies arising from Russia-Ukraine war. Records from AFDB indicates that Africa now faces a shortage of at least 30 million metric tons of food, especially wheat, maize, and soybeans, both imported from both countries. Consequently, the initiative, that's the one by AFDB, is to benefit 20 million African farmers who will receive certified seed and technology to rapidly produce 38 million tons of food. Well, this is just one of the many assistance. We have the one from the United States, we have the one from the World Bank, we have the one from IMF. But what should Nigeria be doing with these packages? We have the President of Agriculture and Industrial Entrepreneurs of Nigeria, Mr. Chukwu Nwachukwu, joining us now to share his perspective. Mr. Nwachukwu joins us virtually from Aba. Good morning, Mr. Nwachukwu. Good to have you.
Good morning. Thank you very much. See you again.
Yeah, so a lot of assistance and attention now coming to not just Nigeria, but the African countries. Are we even able to keep a record of it? Then we'll now talk about coordinating it so it doesn't just end, with what we see in the news with figures, and then we don't even feel the impact.
Well, as I said to you the last time, it's never been the absence of policy initiatives. It has always been the absence of policy implementation. As a matter of fact, I believe that the World Bank and the other donors must be tired of donating to Nigeria because there's no reciprocal growth in the system. We still have a pervading poverty, unacceptable unemployment levels. And so if we do not target these funds to where they're supposed to go, they cannot create production or productivity. It's a wrong handling of program initiatives, particularly giving it to people who are unable to execute them. I believe, and I've said it before, these interventions should be private sector driven. Government has failed and failed woefully to implement any of the policy initiatives that would create food security in Nigeria. So I think it's just not a matter of figures, it's a matter of who is implementing it. There continue to be figures bounced up and down, billions and billions of naira, and they have been sunk into this country with little or no impact on poverty or food security.
All right, so I know you said more like figures, but really in an ideal situation, who should be in charge? How should it flow from these international bodies or a country like the United States? How should it flow, and how do you think it should be channeled so that it will get to the last man down there in the ladder?
It should be channeled. It should be channeled through the development banking system with stringent conditions to ensure that these funds are actually loaned out to entrepreneurs. Last time I was with you, we talked about agripreneurs, and we're still almost at the concluding aspects of signing MOUs with development finance institutions and also development banking, the commercial banks in Nigeria, so that these funds can then be actually channeled to the entrepreneurs, whom I call agripreneurs. These are the people who are operating on the profit motive, produce food. When you put it in the hands of government, there's so much bureaucracy. The bureaucracy will not allow them to actually release those funds. As good as it sounds, a lot of these funds are not placed in commercial banks to attract interest rates. And that's where you see pervading corruption going on in this country. I think that, and I will advise the World Bank and the donor agencies, not to target these things or put this money in the hands of any government agencies at all. They do not have the capacity to implement the policies that would encourage growth, production, and productivity in agriculture. Now, with Raw Materials Research and Development Council of Federal Ministry of Science, as I told you, have an MOU with them. We're negotiating with deposit money banks and commercial and development finance institutions like Bank of Industry. What Bank of Industry should do is simply to warehouse these funds. So they're not living up to what they're supposed to do. They're just so much inactivity and efficiency built up in the system. They should warehouse these funds and then loan them out to people who are the actual practitioners of agricultural production. Now, when we are through with our program, which should be in the next couple of months, each entrepreneur will be involved in a clustering system. The reason for clustering is so that they cross-collateralize themselves in the first instance. And secondly, we'll be able to monitor and target those funds to go to the actual entrepreneurs and the actual production. That's the only way you can actually trace and track the funds. We don't track the funds. They go into wrong hands, and it's just business as usual. And this business as usual will keep us back by the next year. And the following year, we will still be talking about the number of funds, amount of funds coming into Nigeria. And of course, we as a country are fond of budgeting. And this budgeting has ritualized programs. Every August, they call for call-up circulars and budget, and I put this thing there. Again, the capital projection for even agriculture is not even implemented. I think the capital projections in agriculture are probably implemented 10%. What happened to the rest of it? It's about time we started to tell ourselves the truth. We have wrong implementers of programs. Government cannot implement purely business-driven enterprises. So these funds should be given to development finance institutions simply for warehousing of those funds. And those funds will now be channeled to the agripreneurs whom we're packaging. We'll package like 500 people per local government in Nigeria. I told you before, not only would you have millions and millions of tons of food production, we produce for raw materials consumption, we produce for domestic consumption, we produce for export, and then we'll create massive employment, not less than 20 million Nigerians employed.
All right, Mr. Nwachukwu, unfortunately at this time, we have more constraints with the war going on in Ukraine. And it looks like the war might be going on for longer than was expected. So we have the challenge, the direct challenge of wheat and corn and other grains, fertilizer and all that. What should we be doing at this time to at least hedge or protect the country? Because inflation is just surging, and we do not know where it's heading to or where it's going to end. What should we be doing at this time as a country to hedge against this surging inflation and with the continuous war and the multiply effects everywhere?
Well, you see, this is actually a very opportune time for Nigeria to engage in agricultural production because there's a great demand, occasioned by the war in Ukraine. So when things like that happen, first of all, the price of oil jumped, twice the value. And there's a dearth of foods. There's not food nor raw materials nationwide or worldwide. So Nigeria, with abundant labor, abundant arable area in Nigeria, should jump into agriculture and begin to create food and raw materials that can replace the stoppage of food from Ukraine, from Russia, and all the allied nations. This should be a boom time. And when we produce these things and export them, guess what happens? It impacts directly on the macroeconomics. There's less demand on the naira. and it will adjust. The exchange rate will be adjusted to normal levels, and indeed, Nigeria can then even earn more in foreign exchange and diversify its economy. So I don't know what the Ministry of Planning is doing. They're not looking at global economy, to look at where we can fit in, on the macro mix. Where are we fitting and where do we require? There's a big demand for maize in Europe. There's a big demand for cassava in China. There's a big demand for wheat. And these are things we can produce. We don't have the ability at this point to go into massive commercial agriculture. But because we can cluster these people, imagine clustering 500 people in every local government, times 774 local governments, it's going to give you 387,000 agro entrepreneurs, all producing targeted crops that we can export and also consume domestically. So this, as much as a boom time for oil, it should be a bigger boom time. More so, when you have people now importing food and raw materials from Nigeria, you hook them there, and the chances are they will not go back to look for new clients to purchase from. So this is an opportune time for Nigeria.
All right, Mr. Nwachukwu, but the reality is that, I mean, the boom time and all that, at this moment, the country is struggling with paying subsidy, which is increasing because of that boom you're talking about. And if we were to diversify and give more attention to agriculture, mechanized farming, industrial park, and all of that, that also requires funding. So the question now is, where do we get that funding from, to jumpstart these projects that we really need to engage with at this time?
That's the interesting part of it. The funds are already here in Nigeria. The funds are available. CBN has budgeted over 220 billion naira for agriculture. I mean, for SME, for small and medium enterprises. They've also budgeted 250-something billion for commercial agriculture as well as anchor borrowers program. It is a question of targeting these funds to the right areas, targeting the funds to production and productivity. They just make all kinds of noises. They do this, they do that, but they don't target. They don't have the manpower, nor do they have the trained manpower to monitor private enterprise at all. So it's agriculture must be private sector driven. It's not something government can just decide this is what we're going to do. And anyway, production of either maize or cassava must be demand driven. Where is the total demand coming from? Is it China? Is it Ukraine? Now there's been a disruption in the flow of food and other items. So if we do not study these things and begin to channel those funds that are already available, then we got a problem. We're going to go back. This boom time, assuming the war ends tomorrow, then we've lost it. But we have to now get people involved that they know that we can indeed produce these things and we have the capacity. We don't need new funding. The funding is already there. In fact, the Bank of Industry can actually intervene by cushioning the interest rate being charged by commercial banks. The commercial banks are worth your capital. Let's just deploy those capital instead of going investing in short-term investments that will yield them unnecessarily high yields, of return. Okay? When you have those things, again, you have so much capital chasing very few production. You're going to, the inflation will definitely rise because the macro mix of supply-demand and supply-demand curve and quotient is not going to play. We need to increase supply over demand to bring down the inflation. So I still say that what we have is there in Nigeria. We have the domestic ability, we have the domestic funds to fund what we need, coupled with the inflow of capital from abroad, from World Bank, from our International Bank, agriculture and stuff like that. It's just a question of these people, and we have the wrong personnel, wrong policies, and nobody's talking about it. We have wrong personnel chasing or implementing policy that they do not know nothing about. The Anchor Borrowers program is a total failure because of wrong implementation. but we're going to get it right. And we're going to be able to show people that we can actually do whatever we need to do. So I'm not afraid. It's just a question of getting the right thing done. And we're very close to signing MOUs. And in the next few months, invite me back, and we're going to tell you that this is a success story. And Nigerians have the ability to produce for themselves.
All right, Mr. Chukwuachukwu, President, Agriculture and Industrial Entrepreneurs of Nigeria. Well, certainly we'll follow up and find out how impactful that industrial park project you're talking about will be. And of course, we all pray for the best because,